happened after the great flood, the biblical flood, with Noah and his sons. Finally, the great secret revealed. We know it as the deluge. And it's found in the book of Genesis, chapters 6 to 9, and the Tanakh, that's the Tanakh. It tells of God's decision to return the earth to its pre-creation state of a watery chaos because of the sins, the great amount of sins, the types of sins that the humans were committing at that time. Described, the myth is inconsistent, while the physical findings of geology and paleontology, a branch of creation and known as flood geology, and science attempt to argue that such a global flood actually occurred. And they seem to be finding the evidence of that. Now, most of us know that the earth was struck by a flood thousands of years ago, known as the flood of Noah, or Dephkalion for the Greeks. In the Apocrypha of Moses, Moses describes that Noah is Dephkalion. It's the same name. Noah means the man of good omen, and Dephkalion is a compound word meaning Deph, meaning come, Kalos, meaning good, Ionos, meaning omen, come, good omen, the coming of the good omen, as was the explanation of Noah's meaning of his name. But there was also a surname of Dardanus and that of Augustus. There are many versions in several ancient myths that referred to a great flood, but when did it take place? Did something happen here on earth, something that did not reach our present knowledge, so that those who were rescued from that great catastrophe would flourish again? And they say that this happened around 10,500 BC. It was about 12,500 years ago, and that's just about the same time as the Younger Dryas event, which was a comet impact, not only in North America, not only on the Northern Hemisphere or Europe, which they originally thought, but at least 7 locations of our Earth. And they believe that had a major extinction event. The Clovis culture of North America, for example, went extinct from that, and a lot of animals, plants, and types of humanoids. So this was dated around 10,500 BC, about 12,500 years ago, around the time of the Younger Dryas. Now, with science and secrets taught from generation to generation in those ancient cultures that helped them grow from scratch, in other words, anything that they could use as technology or knowledge to help their lives. And can these secrets or some very critical information from our true past be discovered, but are still hidden and looked at as secrets that were passed on to priests to keep in their knowledge and pass on to each other until the time to revive it or progressively develop it? Did other tribes far from Earth, called humans by the gods, in other words, human deities by humans, come to help and endow them with knowledge? But it took centuries for them to be understood and developed. What's happened over the long millennia from then to today? Now, according to the flood and creation narrative, the flood is a reversal and renewal of God's creation of the world. In Genesis 1, God separated the waters above the earth from those below so the dry land can appear as a home for living things. But in the flood story, the windows of heaven and fountains of the deep are opened so that the world is returned to the watery chaos of the time before creation. Even the sequence of floods events mimics that of creation, the flood first covering the earth to the highest mountains and then destroying in order the birds, cattle, beasts, swarming creatures, and finally mankind. And this parallels the Babylonian flood story in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where at the end of rain, all of mankind had returned to clay, the substance of which they had been made. And the ark itself is likewise a microcosm of Solomon's temple, the size of it, in other words. Intertextuality is the way biblical stories refer to and reflect one another, and such echoes are seldom coincidental. For instance, the word used for ark is the same used for basket. It's kivotos in Greek, meaning a box, and implying a symmetry between the stories of two divinely chosen saviors in the world threatened by water and chaos. The most significant such echo is the reversal of the Genesis creative narrative, the division between the waters above and waters below. The earth is removed, the dry land is flooded, most life destroyed, and only Noah and those with him survive to obey God's commandment to be fruitful and multiply. Now, some say that this deluge flood took place around 10,500 BC. There are those that claim we've had many floods in the past. And now, as far as the time setting, there are those who do not agree that it took place 10,500 years ago. For example, the Masoretic text of the Torah places the Great Deluge 1,656 years after creation, or 1,656 Anno Mundi, the year of the world. Many attempts have been made to place this time span in a specific date in history. At the turn of the 17th century, Joseph Scaliger placed creation at 3,950 BC. Petavius calculated 3,982 BC. And according to James Ussher's chronology, creation took place in 4004 BC, dating the Great Deluge at around 2348 BC. So you see we have various dates, but we have had various flood myths in the past, the flood and the creation narrative, the renewal of God's creation of the world in Genesis 1, when God separates the waters above the earth from those below, so the dry land can appear as a home for living things. But the flood story, the windows of heaven and fountains of the deep are opened so that the world is returned to the watery chaos at the time before creation. Even the sequence of flood events mimics that of creation, the flood first covering the earth to the highest mountains and destroying in order birds, cattle, beasts, swarming creatures, and finally mankind. And this parallels the Babylonian flood story in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And you can find those videos in the playlist I have, Epic of Gilgamesh, if you want to read them, where at the end of rain, all of mankind returned to clay, substance of which they had been made, and the ark itself, the microcosm of Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple, built in Jerusalem, was the holy temple, the ancient Jerusalem, before its destruction by Nebuchadnezzar II, after the siege of Jerusalem of 587 BC, and its subsequent replacement with the second temple in 516 BC, and that was renewed by Herod, King Herod, at the time before the birth of Jesus Christ, and that was destroyed. The end of the second temple was 70 AD. And this is translated from a Greek article and also from Wikipedia information. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.